What's going on, everybody? This is the blockchain backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. Today, we'll be taking a peek over here at the Bitcoin price chart, which we are in crash mode here in the cryptocurrency market. Ever since that 27,000 got breached back in there, the market has just been tanking, taking the altcoin market with it. Hard to find any hope in sight, but we'll take a peek at a few things on the charts. As you can see, that Bitcoin has now reached down to the 200-week moving average. It is poked below it at this point. Now, historically, if that acts as support, we've seen it before. It actually has dipped below it before. Even back in 2015, it dipped down below it as well. There's still 5 days remaining until that weekly candle closes. So, undoubtedly wicks do happen in these things if something like that were to hold. But I'm not so convinced that it will. I've discussed a lot of the issues with the 200-week moving average this time around in comparison to 2014-15 and in comparison to 2018 and 19, in that, there's really no support over here for it to act as a supportive area outside of just being a moving average sitting out in the middle of nowhere. There's no supportive areas anywhere, whereas when we look back throughout history, right, when we were pulling back in here, this was a big level that was resistance and then support, and then going back, we'll pull up the Bitstamp chart, going back in here, right, this was like a resistance area, a breakout, pulling back to the resistance area, and that just happened to be where the 200-week moving average was coming in here. But in current times right now, there's no support over here to the left. So I'm not so convinced that it's going to hold. It seems like we are in crashing mode in this market, which means we'll probably see much lower prices, including over there in the altcoin market. It is appearing that we've gotten no alt season here in this market for most of the names. I'm definitely disappointed by that. I know a lot of you guys are too. Now it comes with trying to, deal with the cards that are being dealt out here. One of the crazy things we were watching ever since the top of Bitcoin came in here, once this fractal really started to emerge here as Bitcoin was marching its way down with a bear market fractal from the actual all-time high, which was highly unusual. It was weird that it was showing up. I was like, man, I've seen this before. I saw this in the depths of the 2018 bear market before Bitcoin ended up capitulating right back in here. And then it went on into capitulation after that. But as you can see, this is showing up way deep into a bear market. Prices had already pulled all the way down. We were way down in here when something like that emerged. Yet we were showing this exact same thing happening in here, even from a time perspective of how absurd it was that it was behaving like this the whole way. And, we're saying, hey, if it continues, has it broken out of it? Has it broken back into it? And well, looking by the things, it's looking oddly familiar again. And, it's hard to know how things will move and how fast things will move. But once that $27,000 did get breached again, it's pretty amazing how it even took it over and it grabbed that same velocity. And even when that line in the sand that we're talking about, that $27,000 got breached, it just, took it just like it did in the past, took it straight down in here. So I don't know if we're following this thing. It's really odd how similar it's been. You could see, pausing out in here doesn't necessarily mean that it's holding. And we're kind of getting some teasing here at the 200-week moving average. Hard to say. The thing about a dip like that or a dip of that magnitude would be that it would be of equivalent sizes of what we've seen in previous bear markets for Bitcoin, or at least darn close to it. It gets you at about 80% drawdown, and that pulls you right back down into here. So as we're in this moment right here, I'm actually not going to put like my stamp on where I think the bottom is. I've been through bear markets before. I've been through these things before. Trying to pick out bottoms is super mega difficult, especially if we're going to lose the 200-week moving average in here. It means we're going to do something different than what we've seen happen before in Bitcoin and how deep it's going to actually go. I've even presented ideas that, this could be wave 5 extended in here, and that prices could fall super, super mega deep for Bitcoin down to about $2,000 to $3,000. And I've shown the reasons for that because we saw that's what actually happened to Ethereum back in the 2018 bear market. That is how low Ethereum ended up going. It was of that equivalent magnitude. Of course, nobody really wants to hear that after we're already going through so much in this market at this point, right? But that's why picking out the bottom is going to be so challenging. One, we're sitting at the 200-week moving average right now. Is a 200-week moving average going to hold? If not, have we revisited our fractal, this ridiculously absurd thing that it followed so well for so long, deviated away from it in here, but now appears to have re-entered? Or are we going to go down and do what we do every single time for Bitcoin, where it's going to head down 85, 87%, hanging out right around here, around $10,000? Or is it gloom and doom, lights out for Bitcoin? judging by the way things look for Bitcoin and flipping on the moving averages and saying that, there just doesn't seem to be any support that's over here in this area. That does, this one seems the least likely that it's going to actually end up being the one that holds. So it does seem more favorable that more downside action is coming. That will probably translate into the altcoins. If you even get a move like this, if you just take it from here currently at 22,000 and you take it down there to 14,000, you're probably looking at 30, 40, 50% moves happening in the altcoin market to the downside based on how it's been behaving. And if we look at how the price action is happening right here for Bitcoin at this current time, we can flip it on to different kind of candles to see what's going on in here, see if there's any type of things happening. There's just no huge buy volume coming in here. It's really just a whole lot of selling. So for some type of like quick reversal, we're not seeing quick reversal volume showing up, obviously. And then, the other challenges that are going to come with Bitcoin in here, we'll put it back on the weekly time frame, is if that's true, right? If we're going to lose the 200-week moving average in here and actually close weeks below it, that's never happened before. So then trying to figure out bottoms that when you've lost that, and that now becomes resistance, because throughout history for Bitcoin, there's never been a time where the 200-week moving average was actually a resistance on the upside. We've seen many times where, these things can act as supports, and they act as resistances, and they can act as resistances in here. What happens when the 200-week behaves as a resistance? That's something we haven't seen before in Bitcoin. So figuring out where is the bottom, if that's the case, right? If we do move down in here, and then this 200-week becomes a resistance up here on the top, boy, then what? So putting my stamp on which one it's going to be. I've been in bear markets before. I know that sometimes when you think the bottom is in, a new bottom gets in, then a new bottom gets in, and it's just a game of absolute torture out there. But some of the things we've been looking at, so it's kind of, here's a little hopium, right? The things we've been looking at is like the length of time that it's taken for bear markets to play out. And this structure should look familiar because this is really what a lot of the altcoins look like right now. And this is also what the altcoin market looked like back in the 2018 crash. And if you go peeking around the altcoin market, you'll see that printed everywhere. But like we talked about, enough time has elapsed for a bear market to have played out for Bitcoin. And even the bounces in here, it also even showed, hey, these were equivalents right in here, right? But what if we stretch this thing, right? What if we get it to like be of an actual match? And let me go grab just this portion of it real quick. And so here we go. I'll put this up here just like this right here. We could see, okay, from the peak to the bottom to the bounce to where have we gone to? That's interesting, right? We know enough time has elapsed in here for an entire bear market to completely play out. We also know from a relative strength standpoint, Bitcoin is as oversold as the bottom of bear market. So this is the bottom of 2014-15 bear market, bottom of the 2018-19 bear market. Here we are at this point. I'll change the colors on these to make them a little bit easier to see. But like, right, if we have our peak that came back in when Coinbase IPO'd in here, how much time elapsed, you could see enough time has elapsed for a whole bear market to play out. And then when just looking at the actual structure of what the ending capitulation looked like, how familiar it looked moving down in here, and then finally capitulation. Well, look at the distance of how far it's gone. That also happens to be to the 200-week moving average. It also happens to be of an equal amount of oversold strength over here on the relative strength index. So those things are interesting to peek at. But for something like that to play out, we'd have to see things act a little differently. One, we'd either have to see the stock market turn up and start heading up, but like we talked about yesterday, it's just rolling over new lows, new lower highs. The 10-year yield has broken out. Tomorrow the Fed's going to talk. This was where the Fed had to pivot back in 2018, but can't really put any marbles on something like that happening. Essentially, everybody expects a 75 basis point hike now with the new inflation CPI numbers that came out on Friday, which was 8.6% inflation year over year, or consumer price index. And so the headwinds of this thing and the 10-year yield and the DXY are their own problems, right? I mean, you can look at that right there. We can see if you look at the last 20 years of where the DXY is, I mean, it's right back at its 702 retracement almost for a 20-year roundup. But will that even matter on the DXY chart? The euro has still somehow majestically been able to hold its bottom down in here, like we've shown on how the altcoin market actually ended up bottoming with this exact same structure. So this is still technically in a hold, but you'd really want to see the euro probably popping up, DXY falling down, the Dow Jones turning up, and the 10-year yield at least chilling out. But again, that takes a lot of hopium and reversal requirements to happen in there. And really, we're just seeing lots of breaks happen. So once Bitcoin took out that $27,000, like we were talking about the line in the sand, that's where things just really started getting moving. So I enjoy showing all these different types of things of how bottoms can play out and how things can play out. But to have any type of reasonable confidence or conviction in which one will play out, I've been in this market long enough to know that once these things are going, the market can dish out as much pain as it wants. And it's been quite amazing to see how it could actually behave so incredibly well compared to previous bear markets. Coming from the all-time high, then we did start to see some deviation happening in here. The irony about these two things, though, is that when Bitcoin was in here in our current time period and when Bitcoin was in here, both of those were hitting the 200-day moving average. We were pointing to that at the time that, hey, look, these things are both, even though this one went higher, they both hit the 200-week moving average. And this was the rejection point for Bitcoin at that time to send it off, and then long period, and then into capitulation. Obviously, we had no long period. It just kept going. And still to this point, looking unbelievably familiar. Also, if this were to be the bottom of Bitcoin, it would be the most shallow bear market of Bitcoin in its history. So that's a gamble you'd have to put out there on saying, hey, that's the bottom, is that it's going to be the most shallow bear market for Bitcoin ever, coming in at about 70% right now. Now, in each of Bitcoin's previous bear markets, after Bitcoin did fall 70%, it actually did end up having bounces in there, both in 2014 and in 2018, and both of them were over 100% rises that happened for Bitcoin. So there even could be trickster stuff that happens in here, right? That, hey, the 200-week moving average comes in as support, bounces up, it looks like it's all good to go. Then it turns over and heads down, right? So very complicated market right there. Here, I'll show those to you from 2018 and from 2014. That in 2018, after a 70% correction was put in, the price did end up bouncing right at 100%. Head on over to 2014. You could see that once it did fall 67%, it did put in a whoppingly big bounce, massive retracement that came in here, all the way back to the 786 Fibonacci retracement, which for Bitcoin right now would be like 60,000, then rolled over. Or even in the circumstance of just bouncing from down in here, right? Where at that point, Bitcoin was down right there at 70%, and then the price rose 100% on the button. Again, just like we saw back in 2018. So in 2018 and in 2014, after a 70% correction came in for Bitcoin, it did rise 100% afterwards. Those could be the tricksters in the cards. However, the difference is we're so deep into this thing at this point, there were different time periods at that time. So enough time has elapsed for a whole Bitcoin bear market, and structurally going the same distance in here. We'll put little boxes on here. You can see how these are lined up right in here. And then here we are right now, and in both circumstances, 200-week moving averages. And in both circumstances, oversold weekly RSI at the exact same level. So that's kind of your dish of hopium right there. I don't know which one it's going to do at this point, but it's definitely been super, super odd for it to so perfectly follow that. It was doing this whole thing in here for 6 months. Then, we're still seeing this thing playing out. So it's hard to fight against something like that when it just keeps going like it. Plus, we have the Celsius stuff going on. So I don't participate in the DeFi world. I don't have a full understanding of Celsius because I don't participate in it. But, following guys to see what they're saying about it and how it all works. Celsius ended up freezing accounts out there so people cannot withdraw, swap, or transfer between accounts. They recently just posted here 5 minutes ago, Celsius Network is working as quickly as possible and will share information as and when it becomes appropriate. Acting in the interest of our community remains our top priority. So that's the first thing they've said now in 2 days, and that it seems they're trying to do everything they can to not get, the assets liquidated, I guess, over there on Celsius. And so that there is a liquidation price level that happens here that would take Celsius out and take all the assets out over there. And currently right now, that's 16,800. Does that get us down there into 16,800? Yep, it sure does. And what would happen if a liquidation of that magnitude ended up happening? I was reading this tweet over here from Isaiah Douglas. I just checked my highest Bitcoin purchase and it was 65,232. I regret nothing. But he started going into talking about what was happening with Celsius in here. And I don't know if this is true or not, but him saying they held 150,000 Bitcoin, and the liquidation pressures we are seeing are from them unwinding their trades and trying to fix an unfixable situation. They are also liquidating users that had crypto collateralized loans since they cannot move funds, and that's adding to it, or adding to the sell pressure. I don't know if that's true. We know that the whole Luna and UST situation, they had the Luna Foundation Guard, I believe they had 83,000 Bitcoins, and we saw how quick things happened there. So if there becomes some liquidation event that happens for Celsius at a particular price level, which they keep collateralizing to push down the liquidation price, and the most recent one that I saw was 16,800. Well, if that's a real threat, if that's really what's in the cards, you know what? This thing, it perfectly plays into that, right? You know, you get down to that 16,800, there's your liquidation, and then boom, that's the end of it. So, you know, like I said, when we crossed below 27,000, when those lines started to break, and then it was just ironic, you know, immediately after those lines started to go, those lines in the sand that I had placed, right after that is when Celsius came out and locked up everybody. And that what happened with Luna, what happened with UST, that took several days for it all to play out. So this is all very fresh. It's very new. And what underlying issues does that cause for the cryptocurrency market if there is some massive liquidation that's coming from these guys, and if they do have that much Bitcoin, you know? So let's take a peek over here at Celsius really quick. What is Celsius? Why is it crashing the crypto market? And to be fair, it appeared like the crypto market was crashing, and that's what caused Celsius to have their issues. But now it's the question of how much more magnitude does Celsius add to it? So what is Celsius? Celsius operates somewhat like a traditional bank, albeit one for crypto rather than fiat currency. Until this week, it was considered among the most successful parts of the DeFi movement. As of May 17th, Celsius claimed that it had 1.7 million users and assets under management of 11.7 billion, having more than 8 billion in loans, and offering extremely high annual percentage yields of up to 18% on cryptocurrency deposits. There's very little formal evidence or regulatory filings from Celsius to support these claims regarding the company's user base or assets under management. Their potential insolvency matters to all crypto investors because they were a major player who had assets deployed in multiple DeFi protocols on different blockchains. If it is forced into full-on liquidation, then the withdrawal of those assets may begin a chain reaction of falling prices and forced liquidations for other DeFi users. So exactly how much they have is unknown. You know, I believe the Luna Foundation Guard, they had about $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. It was 80,000 Bitcoin. So at the time, at about 35,000, be about $2.8 billion at that time. So that's also there too, right? So it's hard to say anything knowing that that is still an overhang and it's so fresh. We're only like 36 hours from when that started. And let me touch topics on this too, just for my channel in general. As you guys know, a sponsor of the channel is Linqto. I get approached by cryptocurrency companies or cryptocurrency lending and exchanges and tokens and NFT projects all the time. I get sponsorship offers all the time and inquiries all the time. And I don't talk about, I turn them all down. And I get it sometimes, with sponsorships, we're like, hey, just get to the content, let's do this, but this is my full-time gig coming on here and making YouTube videos, 30 to 40 hours a week of recording and editing and putting all that, and advertisers pay for space. That's just part of YouTube. But I do a lot of vetting on here, and if you guys know this, I've never preached any type of coin to you. I've never accepted any money to preach any type of coin or any type of NFT project or to promote any type of crypto exchange or any type of lending platform. And these are the reasons why I haven't. The only sponsorships I've ever had on my channel are Linqto and Unstoppable Domains. I'm very particular in what I pick because I don't want these types of things to happen. And this is one of the reasons why I don't accept very many sponsorships. And I've been doing this for a while. But as you know, I don't preach or don't accept any type of money for any type of particular coins. I don't do coin reviews or send you to particular cryptocurrency exchanges because out of the fear of these types of things ending up happening. And I just wanted to point that out. I know sometimes when there's sponsorships and stuff, you just want to get straight to the content. But when I pick things for my channel, I go through extreme vetting on whether or not I feel it's something that is safe. And it's going to stay that way on this channel. I'm not going to be having sponsorships for exchanges or lending platforms or coins or NFTs like I never have. But this is a really good example of why I don't, why there's not 100 different affiliate links in the description of my video, and why I go through a ton of vetting. So we've gone through a lot in here, right? So we know we have the Celsius thing overhanging on us. We know that, there doesn't appear to be a bunch of buy volume showing up in here for Bitcoin to send it moving to the upside quickly. After following this for so long in here we are doing more of it again. even if it did follow this, hey, this would be the perfect amount to go and liquidate Celsius. And what would a liquidation mean for the altcoin market? It probably would not be good. So, I'm not going to come on here and be like, hey, all these altcoins are going to bounce from right here. No, things could get really ugly out there, really ugly. If you saw a 50% move in Bitcoin or something, and you saw another 50% move in those altcoins from where they're at right now, it'd be a lot of pain out there. So it becomes the question of, do you want to handle that type of pain? If that threat is in the cards, we know that threat is there from Celsius, and we know they're keeping their lips very tight. They're not talking. We're very fresh into this, and it's an unknown wild card out there right now. So picking where a bottom's going to be right now, it's something I can in no way put a stamp of confidence on any of it at this point. I've shown you all the different things. I've shown you what this looks like. I've shown you what happened in 2014 and 2018 after Bitcoin had fallen 70%, which is where we're at currently, how in both of those times it did bounce 100%. A 100% bounce would put you back to about $40,000 for Bitcoin before it rolled over again. Showing you what it looks like if we just kind of keep on going just like we are right now. We've seen what happened if that 200 week can come in and save the day. And we've shown what prior capitulations looked like back in 2014 and 2015. And ironically, where does that end up retracing you back to? Whoop-de-whoop, right back near the 702 Fibonacci retracement, albeit taking quite a while. And that even in the time that we're in right now, we could see that the RSI is massively oversold, just like we saw during the last two capitulation endings for Bitcoin as well. So a lot going on out there, and we'll just have to see how it goes as time goes. And macro environment with the stock market's not good. 10-year treasury yield, not good. Not seeing buy volume show up in here just yet. That's not good. And Celsius, that's not good. So we'll see how this 200-week moving average does. As we've gotten here, also the altcoin market has now been testing its previous all-time high. So I'm cheering for support to come in. I'm cheering for high buy volume to come in and send this thing back into more comfortable prices, but it's just been a rough ride out there, and you can see how many weeks this is. We're working on our 11th red week for the altcoin market, and you can look back through history. That has never happened before, so it's an unprecedented time for sure, and there's never been a time out here where there's just been so much consistent red without any type of relief. And even though it's back there at its 200-week moving average, it's back there at its all-time high, there still just aren't indicators that I can recognize that are saying this thing is bouncing from right here, especially with all the macro stuff we have happening and looking at things like Ethereum and seeing where Cardano ended up pulling back into for Ethereum. That's down there near like $700, $800 for an equivalent move like that. And we still haven't gotten there at this point. So I just don't see things just yet. But, hopefully as the days progress, more things become more apparent. But right now, still, things just don't look good. But if you do need some hopium in your life, you do have that going on there. And along with it, the RSI is as oversold as it has been at the bottom of bear markets twice. So we'll see what today brings. Checking in on Tether again real quick. It did have that big pop down yesterday. It has kind of come back up again today. So still holding steady, but still not pegged back to $1. So we'll see what the day has to bring. But those are all the things that I'm looking at right now. And so as we start to wrap this thing up, speaking of Linqto, I got this. I just gotten a DM on this. I didn't notice this over there on Twitter, but for the sponsor of the show, Linqto, they actually do even have a reduced pricing. So it's $5,000 with a $1,000 airdrop of XRP for investing in any unicorn available on the Linqto platform. So that's pretty crazy. I haven't seen that one yet. I've seen them do it, invest in Ripple or invest in Linqto. I believe you could get $1,000, but I've never seen it where you can invest in anything with the minimum investment size and get the $1,000 back in XRP. So that's pretty cool. That's over here on Linqto, the sponsor of the channel. Private investing made simple, an opportunity to invest in companies prior to the IPO. They've got a bunch of companies over here to be able to invest in private equity. And there's always a link in the description of my video to Linqto, where today, any minimum investment made on a unicorn on the Linqto platform gets $1,000 back in XRP for first-time investors. So for new people joining the platform. Link in the description. Otherwise, like usual, I don't know, I'm sure you guys do the exact same thing, or many of you do the exact same thing. I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is I grab my phone and I say, all right, what's going on? Looking at the price charts. Then I bust out my iPad and I start doing the charts and stuff like that. And then I come straight in here to my computer, which I kind of have an idea of what's going on in the market on my iPad while I'm laying in bed. I'll go get ready for the day, do my things, whether it's getting dressed and showered or if I'm going to be working out that morning before I end up recording. I do the video, then I come in here and I stare at the charts all day long, and then I stare at the charts until I get in bed, and then I bust out my iPad in bed, and I'm laying in bed looking at charts at the exact same time. I'm sure many of you are the same, and if you're not, God bless you, because I'm entrenched in it almost 24/7 most of my waking day. But that's, again, what I'll be doing today, keeping an eye on these things because there's a lot going on out there with Bitcoin back at its 200-week moving average. So otherwise, keep an eye on it, and we'll see if anything crazy comes in and if I need to check in again for a second time today. But we'll see. But all right, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. If you could, please like this video and give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified of when I create new content and when I go live. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.